When filming or investigating undercover, you need to think about how you look and make sure that you fit in with the people that you're working with. So I always sort of try to dress to blend in. So nothing dramatic like blue hair or dreadlocks, and in your clothing to make you look like a protester or animal rights campaigner, for example.
You go to work with sort of pre-splattered blood then. You go to animal testing.
Also, depending on the investigation that you're doing, it depends how far you push your limits. How important is it that you don't get caught doing what you're doing, or is it more important to make sure that you get the footage out there? Also, when you're working undercover, you build up a web of lies, basically, with the people that you're working with. So very quickly I stopped sitting around with people having cups of tea, because the more you talk and the more questions they ask, you have to remember all those lies. And that web of lies grows exponentially, and it's very difficult while you're also, you're doing a physical job, you're also trying to gather evidence, then to be keeping this web of lies. If you're then, if you make mistakes and things don't match up in what you're saying, that can then raise suspicion of you and what you're doing. So basically I avoided talking with people. I became a bit nerdy and a bit shy and started doing sort of word searches, which also meant I had some paper that I could scribble notes in the back of the book as well while I was there. I also, this was on a personal level, but I basically didn't befriend the people that I was exposing. And I was invited to parties in the evening by the staff there and things, and I didn't do that. And basically the whole Mark Stone shagging protesters that he was then going to expose, it crosses a lot of lines, I think.
Did it create any suspicion, though, that you were being quite so separate?
I was just I was quite nerdy, shy person, and I was also quite keen to get on in the company. And so because of that, I was actually given tours of other departments in the building to see where I wanted to, how my career was going to grow with them. So that was actually worked quite well, being a sort of keen, shy person. So I got a tour of the monkey department, for example, and things.
So can I just ask, it sounds like before you advanced on it, developed a persona, or like a character that you played, or was it like that? Did you make it up as you went along?
That was my first undercover, so I guess I was learning it, but I had to fit in. So I had lots of, we did role play stuff beforehand. So before I did my job interview, before I went in, I did a lot of role play and also talking to the lawyer a lot about what I could and couldn't say. So even in terms of your CV, you can't lie about things in terms of things. You can miss stuff out. So I missed out my degree and stuff because I was just going to be cleaning out cages, but I couldn't put in stuff that I hadn't done. So yeah, I came in with a bunch of new people starting. They took in 6 new people, so it was. But yeah, you just have to take it. You're not going to know what it's like inside. So.
How long were you there for? What was the time period again?
10 weeks.
10 weeks.
And at the end of the last thing I was going to say about that film basically was the film itself won the British Environmental Media Award Scoop of the Year, and also the International Bridget Bardot Genesis Award, which I received in Hollywood, and it felt very bizarre going from this lab job, which was really a horrendous job to do, to ending up in this sort of swanky Hollywood do, which of course I wouldn't go to now because of climate change and flying, but I didn't think about that at that point.
Do you not fly at all then?
I didn't for 9 years, but I've been working on a couple of projects which involved me needing to go abroad this year.
So what, you get a train and boat, do you?
I did fly for those because I felt there were significant campaign issues that I wanted to support.
Yeah, I have the same issues, vital holidays.
Before you moved on from that, I just wanted to say I worked with Peter during that period with your investigation and theirs, and you can't really underestimate the impact that had. It was so many people working in that field, specifically looking at vivisection, knew a lot about what was going on behind the scenes there, but it's one thing one group saying it, it's quite another having it being made public through indisputable evidence like video evidence, which I think is something that resonates so well with people. You can't argue with it really, and it's also something that people automatically have a very strong emotive response to. And it galvanized, I think, so many people and got so many people actively involved in looking at this as an issue and working on it. So yeah, I don't think there's any greater tool than footage like that, or an investigation that comes up with that kind of hard evidence. So thanks for doing it.
After I worked on this film, Compassion World Farming got in touch with me and asked if I'd work undercover for them. And they basically have a strategy of not exposing individual farms, because quite often the farm that we're working at is because we've managed to get a job there, and rather than that being the worst one. And I quite like that they're showing up the industry and what goes on, rather than highlighting a particular farmer who's like lots of other farmers doing the same thing. So I've tried.
Ask you a question. I mean, obviously you had first-hand experience with these people, if you want to call them that, and I mean that. I just got the sense they're the sort of people who could be, you know, car clampers. I mean, they just had no emotional connection to what they were doing. And the way I felt, I was thinking in fact they were laughing and joking. I think that may have been their way of not connecting with what they were doing, or some sort of, to stay emotionally away from any pain. What was your sense of that?
And it was incredible to actually see the group mentality. So the fact that, you know, everyone's doing it, it's okay. And you know, you've probably seen that torture from the Iraq War and stuff, that, you know, basically everyone's doing it and they're all in cahoots together, and then they're all slightly guilty of it. And so maybe they continue to stay quiet. But one of the things I highlighted when I talked back to them was that I didn't feel that there was a good level of hierarchy that I could, you know, that people could then go and report on. And that's one of the things that they changed, that basically if they felt there was something that needed exposing, that who would they expose it to without, you know, in their workplace.
And can I just ask, are you completely against animal testing?
I've kept a journalistic hat on all the way through this, and basically I was exposing what happened on a day-to-day basis, and that's my public story.
Okay, fine, thank you.
When you were recording, were you turning the cameras on and off, and also what evidence were you looking for?
It wasn't specific evidence. I filmed for an hour a day because that's how long the battery lasted, and the tape. So, and I picked different times of the day. So like when they were going to do the tests, I knew the blood tests were going to happen at that particular hour. But also like through the day I did different hours. So I go off to the toilets and wire myself up and stuff. So yeah, 1 hour a day and different hours and different days. And then if someone said, I'll give you a tour at lunchtime, then I'd quickly go and get the kids on.
Okay.
What are you working on at the moment? Are you allowed to tell us?
Yeah, no, film on tar sands oil extraction.
When's that going to be going out?
January, February.
Where?
It's through the People on Planet network.
Oh, right.
And big screen universities. So yes, I worked undercover. Oh, sorry, were there any questions?
Just thinking about to talk about now. Journalistically, if you. So I'll let you continue before I question.
Okay. Did you?
With regard to the violence that was present
Yeah.
HLS, I was wondering, from your point of view, how much of that is institutionalized? So, for example, I think it's in the 60s, you had the Stanford prison experiment, where they took a bunch of people, normal, good, decent people, and they put them in this condition where half of them were...
Well, yeah, I'm not sure, but I probably won't talk about latest technology in the big...
That's you knowing that you were going to be certainly closed up. That's quite big.
There was absolutely no
certainty
whatsoever. Their ideal scenario was that I would get put in the dog unit, because that's what they had evidence from the researchers that got the film commissioned in the first place, where things were going on. But most likely, because of the numbers of animals they have, I was most likely going to get put in with rats. But in my interview, I did talk a lot about my dog experience, because our dogs had puppies when I was a kid. And stuff. So basically I did emphasise that in the job interview, and then we were just amazed. We thought I'd have to work for months in the rat department before I could try and get transferred into another department. So it was completely random and lucky, if you can say that, but I ended up where I was and viewing what was there. It was, I could have not ended up in any of this.
Do you think that plays a big part in exposing animal cruelty?
I was just about to say that with any undercover job, it's really hit and miss as to whether you get footage. You can be on a job for weeks and not get anything, or you can just get it on day one. So it's kind of, I had a job recently where I went undercover in the circus, and they'd had somebody in there, I think it was like 10 weeks again, and he ended up with quite a high position within the circus, which was bizarre. Somebody resigned and he got promoted because he had those skills. But he was finding it very difficult to actually get a camera into those places and film it. So they said, could I come in? So I went in as his girlfriend for a day, and turned up as his girlfriend, and went round with him, and I was just like, oh wow, look at the owls, they're so cute, get a picture of me with them. And I had a video camera and handed it to people there and said, can you film me with the tigers and stuff, and then I'd take the camera and get the shots I needed. So in one day, I think I filmed like 8 minutes, and I ticked off their shot list that they wanted me to get in this one day, which is a good date for them. It just depends on how lucky you get and whether you feel you can get the camera out and cover it.
But that particular one made a huge splash, didn't it? And even the fact that you were so young, and that became a story in itself, didn't it?
Yeah.
Much to your embarrassment. But but it did. It was actually a really kind of very, very effective campaign, very effective project.
It's probably the film that's created the most change from the years I worked on. But can I come on with the compassion while farming? So basically, the jobs I've done there have been I've trailed live animal exports across Europe. I've gone to horse markets, and I've spent many weeks as a egg packer. With any undercover job you're doing, there's a huge amount of preparation you need to do before you go undercover, and it's really hit and miss as to where to get the evidence, which is what we just talked about. So when I was working for Compassion World Farming, I actually went as far as applying to an agricultural college, and I got a place at one of the universities, and then basically decided to take a year out, and I was going off to get work experience with animals, and that was my storyline while I was doing a lot of work with them. So then I could go into places. I had tutors' names that I'd met, and I'd made notes of it when I'd gone around the college, and was like, and basically it'd be great if I could have video footage to show when I'm doing presentations about different animals as part of my coursework. So I wasn't even filming with a covert kit on this. I had a camcorder. I used to leave it out on the counter and let other people pick it up. So there's footage of me doing stuff and locking around in front of the camera, and then I'd pick it up and go and get the shots I needed to get. So this is a clip from the battery chicken investigation that I worked on, and I hadn't got to the edit or the music, which I find slightly bugs me, music, but that's I'd like to point out that this footage is 2 different people with 2 different chicken farms, so it's really hard to
Compassion in World Farming embarked on an investigation into the battery cage system, essentially so that we could show ordinary people what is going on behind the closed doors of the factory farm shed. Battery cage is the oldest and perhaps the cruelest of the factory farm systems. It's a system which condemns 30 million hens in the UK alone to a life of imprisonment.
I think the work I've actually done in the battery hen unit has been successful. I've got all the footage that I wanted to get from there in a short space of time. I think investigations are incredibly difficult to undertake. You have to do a huge amount of preparation before you actually go undercover. You have to have stories built up and contacts, and they are incredibly stressful. But I think if you can get footage out that helps create change in the future, then I think it's worth it.
Battery cages are so small that the hens can't even stretch their wings, they're so barren that they have no nest in which to lay their eggs, and they're so restricting that the bird's bones can become brittle to the point where they simply snap from under them. Simply no need for hens to be crammed into battery cages. There are alternatives. Free range, for example, where the hens can not only exercise and stretch their wings, but they can also enjoy fresh air and sunshine. Through a combination of hard-hitting campaigns, political lobbying and reasoned argument, underpinned by our investigative work, Compassion in World Farming is working harder than ever to really make a change and to make sure that the battery cage is banned in the UK and throughout the rest of Europe.
Compassion. Together, we can make it change.
I suddenly realised that I'm only about halfway in, I've got half an hour left, so I have to speed up a bit. So basically the results of this video was sent to every MEP before the vote to phase out battery cages, which the MEPs did vote for, and that should come into enforcement from January 2012. So that was part of that campaign. My next film I was going to show is basically a film. I felt really strongly about the issues going on in Burma, and I didn't feel there was any media coverage going on about it, and so I basically decided to go over there and do a question.
So sorry, just in relation to what you've just shown, just as another sort of tactic, open liberations have happened in Australia and the UK and the US, whereby rather than going undercover, people actually go in overtly at night and film themselves talking about the conditions in those facilities, and then film themselves actually taking animals from those facilities. And then going to vets, and then the vet looking at the animal and assessing that animal's condition. So basically very openly saying, we have gone in, documented this, what we've seen we define as cruelty, and then taking those animals out of that situation and justifying it by all the video footage that has come together. So it's a much more risky tactic. I suppose you're open to quite harsh prosecution, but so far no one has been prosecuted. So just as a different tactic for getting that footage is just doing it quite blatantly.
Yeah.
Journalistically, how do you balance the need to, say you said you didn't want to focus on one farm because you wanted to get like an industry-wide perspective, but also the need to as a journalist to kind of label your work and evidence you said, if you're writing something, you can just say we went to a farm and we
saw Compassion on Farming, so that's my sort of reporting back to them. I just like the fact that they're not sort of homing in on one, that they're looking at it as an industry. They're trying to change the whole industry by getting footage. It's just a different technique, it's just a different way of doing it. Because I felt in some ways that the farmers were being quite kind, letting me come and work for them. It was the ones that were going, oh yeah, I'll give you some work experience and stuff, and this is going on across the whole country. They're just the ones that happen to be saying. I lost my job with the hen egg packing one. I asked a few too many questions. Basically, one day I realised that all the medium-sized eggs coming from the chickens were getting packed into a free-range box, which said on it, a farm in Ireland. And I was like, how does it know that they're free-range eggs going? They're all medium-sized. and basically I think they suddenly got a bit worried and asked me to not work there anymore. And I said, I was trying to get work experience with the animals, can I have some chickens? And he was like, yeah, have some chickens. And he put a whole bunch in a box and just handed them to me. So suddenly I was walking out of this place going, okay, I've lost my job, and I've got a bunch of chickens. It just felt like I was following my story through. I was phoned home from outside in the car going, I've lost my job and we've got some chickens, we ought to go and get a coop. And then I documented them coming out of the box for the first time, and they had virtually no feathers, and their feathers grew back, and they started dust bathing and running around the garden and having a lovely time. So it was quite cathartic, I think, as well. People should go out undercover all the time. I think it'd be a bad move to be like an undercover investigator as your main job. I think have the odd project if people are interested in doing these things. It's incredibly stressful, and people I know that do it almost full time do go slightly mad, or which is basically. I've ended up in some really challenging situations. I've had trucks I'm following block the road all of a sudden, and then had to confront the drivers, and you need to have stories ready when you get into these challenging situations, and have backup plans, have people who are on the end of the phones if you need help. I've had a time where I was staking out an abattoir in southern Italy, and there was a bit of a sort of it was like some film thing where we dozed off sitting in this car waiting for this truck to come, and suddenly realised that our car was floodlit. So that it was just white light outside there, and then through this white light there were people running at the car in puffer jackets, and I realised they had guns, and didn't know who they were, and it turned out it was Italian police. We were in quite a nice car because we were doing a trail and we needed to not be in some old battered thing, and they didn't know why we were parked in a field at night and stuff. So we basically managed to talk our way out of the scenario, but I did have guns pointed at me, which did freak me out. Yes, and the next film, Burma. So basically, basically I went with all my camera equipment and my edit suite fit into this bag here, this backpack. So anyone can do this stuff. I just felt like this is an issue I really felt was important. Nobody was covering it at the time. And then I had this friend, in London, he was one of the leaders of the 88 uprising in Burma. He came over to the UK. He'd finally got his refugee status after 7 years of applying for it. And I was like, what are you going to do? Because it gave him a passport. And he was like, I want to go to the Thai-Burma border. He couldn't go back into Burma, leave anything, but he was like, I want to go to the Thai-Burma border to the refugee camps and see if I can meet my comrades from the 88 uprising. And there was me going, documentary. So I said, can I come and follow you? And he was like, yeah, that'd be great. So we went off together with our rucksacks, and unbeknown to me, there was a plan hatched, which was to go inside Burma and meet the rebel army inside Burma. So basically, here's a clip from the documentary. This can't be filmed because I might need to blur out, but I was really frustrated. I'd gone there, I felt I'd put my life on the line to get that footage out, and also I had lots of, there's different edits I've done of it, but basically I wasn't sure whether I should be putting out the story of the rebel army, which was part of the story I got over there, or delivering medical equipment to the refugee camps, which was another side of the story. While I was out there, I just followed on the story and what he did, so I was basically trailing around after him. The rebel army does exist, but it's very small numbers. It's probably, I think it's in the hundreds, possibly the thousands. So it's a very small percentage of the population over there, and a large majority of the population in Burma want democracy using non-violent methods, so I didn't want to portray the wrong angle as well. One TV company said to me that they'd be more likely to commission it if the story had been about me going over there. And I really didn't like that. That just felt incredibly uncomfortable. My story is about Om. Om had this whole history. He was one of the leaders of the uprising in '88. It wasn't my story. It was his story that I wanted to tell. The next film, I'm going to run out of time.
Can I ask quickly?
Sure.
Have you done any?
Taking on Tarmageddon, and it's kind of the idea is it's going to be like a road movie. Student road movie intercut with tar sands oil extraction in Canada and why people need to campaign on it. It's following a youth exchange of UK students going over to Canada. I've filmed that bit already, and then the Beaver Lake Cree First Nation group are coming over next month, and then we're filming them for a couple of weeks, going around universities in the UK and seeing how the people on both sides can campaign on tar sands together. And the aim of the film is going to be to inspire people to get involved in the protests. While we're over there, next film. So that was while we were over there. We did one film before we went, and then we were filming every day, following what the students did. And then I just went to a workshop before this one, which was making films without editing. And we were editing these ones, and we basically had several nights. We made 4 films while we were there and uploaded them onto the web, and that just meant they were very short nights. And then you were back up and filming the next day, so that was quite exhausting. But we just knew once we got back here we'd be running around and struggle to actually get more editing done until we get the big film done. So we're hoping to finish the whole film in sort of January, February, and if anyone knows any places we can screen, we really need help on getting screenings, so please let me know if you'd like a screening on that at all. Yeah, there's a couple of us working on this one, but we're also really up for any help if anyone wants to join. We've got a couple of weeks where we need to be filming students in different universities and things, so yeah, let us know if anyone wants to get involved. The last clip I'm going to show, because I'm running out of time, is basically a film I made called Non-Violence for a Change, and it's all about why protests need to stay non-violent in this country. It was made for the Quakers here as part of their Turning the Tide programme. I made it 10 years ago, and they've been using it in different workshops around the world, and they felt it was still being used, and but it was getting slightly dated, so they asked us if we'd do an update of it, which I finished in spring of this year. And here's a clip from that film. The idea is that people watch it and then debate and discuss the issues involved in it. That's kind of all I was going to say. Is there any questions?
Going back to like what you were first talking about, like the
PETA was that they didn't, because then they were filming and exposing company, breaking company laws. They basically then couldn't get a broadcast of that footage. So we basically followed all the sort of legal route in order to make sure that the footage could get broadcast out. So I had I was given, in the public interest, I was granted a license in order to film.
Who's granted that?
It's now called Ofcom, but it was the British Television Commission, or something, ITC, Independent Television Commission. It was kind of a paperwork thing you had to do, but without it, it could have potentially been a bar to get the footage out.